From the outside, it looked like the perfect modern ranch story. Two broadcasters leave corporate life, build a cattle operation near Gillette, Wyoming, and invite the internet along for every muddy, wind-blown step. Cameras captured calving season, equipment breakdowns, hard winters, and honest conversations about ranch finances. Viewers didn't just watch, they felt like part of it. Then, something shifted. Uploads felt different, the dynamic changed, and before long, rumors started spreading across comment sections. Was the ranch struggling? Was the channel ending? Or was there something bigger happening behind the scenes? What most people didn't realize is that the real turning point had nothing to do with cattle prices or YouTube algorithms. It was personal, quiet, and far more complicated than any thumbnail could explain. Because the untold story of our Wyoming life isn't about a collapse. It's about what happens when real life collides with a public brand, and everyone is watching. Long before the rumors, before the headlines, there was just a camera and a ranch. Mike and Aaron didn't start our Wyoming life as influencers. They started it as storytellers. Both came from radio backgrounds, which meant they understood something most new creators don't: how to hold attention without overcomplicating things. When they brought that skill to their ranch near Gillette, Wyoming, it clicked almost instantly. The channel wasn't polished in a Hollywood way. It was raw. Wind in the microphones, mud on the boots, long days that didn't end when the sun went down. Viewers saw calves being born, equipment breaking, fences going up, and the real math behind ranching expenses. That honesty built trust. Instead of romanticizing rural life, they explained it. They showed the stress along with the sunsets. And because of that transparency, people didn't just subscribe. They invested emotionally. Over time, the channel grew into one of the most recognized ranch voices on YouTube, not because it was dramatic, but because it felt real. And that's where the pressure quietly began. Because once your everyday life becomes content, every decision becomes public. Every disagreement feels amplified. Every change gets noticed. What started as a simple window into Wyoming ranching was slowly becoming something bigger, a brand, a business, and a story thousands of people felt connected to. And that kind of attention changes everything. Growth is exciting until it isn't. As the audience expanded, our Wyoming life stopped feeling like a side project and started operating like a full-scale media brand. What began as simple ranch documentation turned into scheduled uploads, sponsorships, merchandise, and a community that expected consistency. And consistency is hard when your office is a working cattle ranch. Weather doesn't cooperate with filming plans. Livestock doesn't wait for camera angles. Equipment fails at the worst times. Add in editing, planning, responding to thousands of comments, and managing partnerships. And suddenly ranch life isn't just physical labor. It's digital labor too. The channel's transparency about costs and operations made it stand out. Viewers appreciated hearing about tight margins, fluctuating markets, and the reality behind food production. But transparency comes with its own risk. When you share everything, people start analyzing everything. If uploads slow, down, viewers notice. If the tone shifts slightly, they speculate. If one person appears less on camera, questions multiply. And when an audience feels emotionally invested, even small changes feel significant. Behind the scenes, the brand was growing. Expectations were rising, and maintaining that balance between authenticity and performance became more complicated by the year. From the outside, it still looked like ranch life as usual. But subtle cracks were forming, and before long, those quiet changes would become impossible to ignore. Then came the shift no one could quite define. It wasn't announced with dramatic music or a shocking headline. It showed up in small ways. A different rhythm to the uploads, a slightly different tone on camera, moments that longtime viewers picked up on instantly. And once people sense change, they start looking for answers. Comment sections turned into quiet investigation threads. Some viewers wondered if the ranch was struggling. Others guessed YouTube revenue might have dipped. A few speculated that something personal was happening behind the scenes. No official statement confirmed any crisis at the time. But when a channel has built its reputation on openness, even a little silence feels loud. That's the strange part about living online. If you share your life for years, your audience feels like they know you. And when things shift, they don't assume life happened. They assume there's a hidden reason. Behind the camera, real life was unfolding, and not everything can be explained in a 15-minute upload. Balancing a working ranch, a growing brand, and a family under public scrutiny adds weight most viewers never see. Every conversation becomes potential content. Every decision feels amplified. And when your personal world begins to change, the ripple effect doesn't stay private for long. What started as subtle differences would soon become undeniable. Because in 2024, the quiet speculation turned into confirmed reality. And the story took a turn no one could ignore. In 2024, the speculation finally had context. It became public that Mike and Aaron were divorcing. No dramatic expose, no chaotic online fallout. Just a real-life announcement that confirmed what many viewers had sensed. Something major had changed. For a channel built around partnership, that news hit hard. For years, audiences had watched them work side by side, fixing fences, handling cattle, explaining ranch finances, raising kids. The dynamic between them wasn't just background energy, it was part of the identity of our Wyoming life. Now that identity had to shift. Reports made it clear that Aaron would continue leading the channel moving forward. The ranch itself remained active. The brand didn't shut down, but the structure behind it was different. And that's a complicated transition to navigate in public. When your marriage and your business are intertwined, separating them isn't just emotional, it's logistical. Land, equipment, branding, and audience. Expectations all overlap, and every move is watched by thousands of people who feel invested. What stood out most wasn't explosive drama, it was restraint. There were no public accusations, no online battles, the reasons stayed private, the focus remained on moving forward. But even without spectacle, the impact was undeniable. Because the channel people had grown attached to wasn't disappearing, it was evolving. An evolution, especially in public, can feel just as jarring as collapse. What happened next would determine whether the brand survived or transformed into something entirely new. After the announcement, everything could have unraveled. A lot of channels built around couples don't survive a split. The dynamic changes, the audience divides, the views drop, and slowly the brand fades. But that's not what happened here. Instead, Aaron stepped fully into the spotlight and continued leading our Wyoming life. The ranch content didn't stop. Calving season still arrived. Projects still moved forward. The camera kept rolling, just from a different perspective. And that perspective mattered. The tone shifted subtly. It felt more independent, more focused, less like a shared operation and more like a personal mission to keep the ranch and the brand moving forward. Meanwhile, Mike carved out his own path, continuing content separately through projects like Beyond the Ranch. It wasn't framed as a rivalry or a dramatic break. It was simply two people choosing different directions after building something together. That's not the explosive ending people online often expect. It's quieter than that. But quiet transitions can be just as powerful, because viewers weren't only processing a divorce, they were adjusting to a new version of a channel they'd followed for years. Some stayed, some drifted away. That's the reality of public change. Yet the ranch didn't disappear. The uploads didn't completely vanish. The story didn't end. It split into two evolving narratives, and that split proved something important. This wasn't a collapse. It was a rebuild. What makes this story different isn't the divorce, it's what happened after. Most online brands tied to a couple crumble when the relationship ends. Audiences pick sides, engagement drops, momentum stalls. The algorithm moves on. But our Wyoming life didn't vanish. Instead, it stabilized. Aaron continued documenting ranch life, leaning into her own voice and leadership. The content felt steadier over time, less about proving anything, more about continuing the work. That consistency slowly quieted a lot of the early speculation. Because when viewers kept seeing cattle work, ranch updates, and day-to-day operations, the dramatic theories started losing oxygen. At the same time, Mike's independent content created distance between the two narratives. Not in a hostile way, just in a practical one. Two platforms, two directions, shared history, but separate futures. And that separation clarified something important. The Untold story wasn't about scandal. It wasn't about financial collapse. It wasn't about a secret implosion behind the scenes. It was about restructuring in public. That's uncomfortable to watch, It forces viewers to confront the fact that creators aren't characters in a long-running show. They're real people making real decisions under pressure. The ranch still stands. The work continues. The brand evolved instead of disappearing. And maybe that's the real twist, because sometimes the most surprising outcome isn't destruction, it's resilience. Today, the channel looks different, but it's still alive, and that alone says a lot. Erin has continued shaping our Wyoming life into something that reflects where her life stands now, not where it used to be. The ranch remains active. The routines continue. But the energy feels more self-defined, less shared, more intentional. That shift didn't happen overnight. It unfolded gradually, episode by episode, as viewers adjusted to a new normal. Some longtime followers found it inspiring, watching someone rebuild publicly without turning it into spectacle. Others quietly stepped away, missing the original dynamic that first drew them in. That's the part people don't talk about. When a brand evolves, it can't take everyone with it, but growth rarely looks like comfort. Meanwhile, the narrative around the channel has cooled. The loud speculation that once filled comment sections has mostly faded. Not because people stopped caring, but because the reality became clear. The ranch didn't implode. The channel didn't collapse. It adapted. An adaptation doesn't trend the way drama does. Looking at it now, the story feels less like a shocking twist and more like a long, steady transition. A reminder that real life doesn't wrap itself neatly for an audience. The cameras are still rolling. The land is still being worked. The difference is simply this. The story is no longer about a couple building something together. It's about what happens after. In the end, the untold story of our Wyoming life isn't about scandal, failure, or some hidden collapse. It's about change. What viewers witnessed over the past few years wasn't the downfall of a ranch or the destruction of a brand. It was the unraveling of a partnership that had been woven into the identity of the channel from the very beginning. And when that partnership shifted, everything else had to shift with it. The ranch kept operating, the uploads continued, the audience adjusted. That's not the dramatic ending the internet usually expects. There was no explosive reveal, no messy public battle, just two people moving forward separately after building something meaningful together. And maybe that's why this story hit differently, because it reminds us that behind every channel, every brand, every perfectly framed thumbnail, there are real lives unfolding. Sometimes the biggest twist isn't what falls apart. It's what manages to keep going.